Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Young Professional African Edition with your host, Jonathan Rwanika.
And Shaneil Mudley, equipping you with all the right tools to jumpstart your career in an African context by sharing experiences
and spreading the gospel of information.
With original music brought to you by Africa's own Untitled Chapter. Time management. How to effectively and efficiently manage your time. Many people feel overwhelmed by all of the demands, distractions, and interruptions of the working day. So time management is a really important skill to have in the modern workplace, especially now during COVID-19. Working from home, juggling family, work, and end-to-end deliverables can be a difficult task. So implementing an efficient time management strategy is of the utmost importance. So, Jonathan, today we're speaking about time management and goal setting in a professional context. I think, going over some of the important things that we've learned along the way that have helped us succeed professionally that were quite different to university. Because I think in university, your time is quite, it's a lot less structured than it is now that you're working. So I think you need to be able to structure your day, manage your time a lot better because you get busier. Sometimes things just end up coming your way. So I think that's going to be the discussion for today's session. What are your thoughts on it from the get-go?
Okay, so I think this is a very interesting discussion, Shaneil, because I think managing your time and organization is a very important aspect of surviving in corporate. But maybe just to leverage on how you introduced it, I actually had quite a different experience. So like in university, I never structured anything. Well, my formative years in university, never structured anything, didn't have any planners, didn't have any organizers and stuff like that. And then a major turning point event happened for me, and I failed my accounting honors year in 2015. And all of a sudden, I had to reinvent myself because like the normal way of the unstructured learning or planning wasn't going to work clearly. So I started planning my days at the beginning of every day, started organizing, like every subject had its own file. I started just doing the things that all the successful students were doing. So I think my structuring and planning phase actually started in my last year of university, shockingly. And then later on used the same in my first years in corporate. What is your experience?
No, that's really cool. So maybe before we go into mine, I just had a bit of a question there. So did you actually see a big improvement when you started structuring it in your final year?
Yes. So like by design, the program, the accounting honors program, had lots of classes. You had to go to class every single day, but it was also very demanding in terms of the amount of time you needed to study. It became impossible to use an unstructured approach because me by nature as an individual, I know I don't like things like lists or things like deadlines. Like I like things unstructured and fluid, that it gives me leeway to be a bit flexible. But that year demanded me to be a certain way because of the workload and how demanding the schedule was. And I think that's sort of what corporate is like. No matter what type of a person you are, whether you're a list person or a person who doesn't use lists, at some point, because of the vast amount of things you need to do and the workloads, you need to have some sort of structure that allows you to just plan better.
Yeah, cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think my journey was a little bit different. So we started in the same place. I was also very unstructured in university, but I carried that through. I think the biggest difference for me was when I started working or when I entered the professional scene. I really saw the difference in that, you're actually working with people now, like with managers, and stuff like that. So for me, the pressure of needing to make deadlines, because there's another human element to it. So like, now the need for me to either impress or deliver to an actual person, versus in university where, you're writing a test and you're sort of accountable for yourself and everything. You're just accountable to you. That's really where the shift took place for me, where I was like, okay, look, in order for me to start succeeding in the workplace, in order for me to make these deliverables and make sure that they're quality deliverables, I need to start mimicking a lot of these successful people. So I always used to listen to sort of these motivational talks or read these motivational books. And, that's a very common thing, planning in the morning and doing those sort of things. So I think once I realized that, like, in order to succeed in this world, it's a very networky thing. It's very dependent on people's perception of you, the quality of work that you're delivering. That's really when I started to shift gears, and I said, like, now it's not just like the difference between a 50 and 60%. It's the difference between a promotion, which is a salary, and obviously, you want to be earning better. You want to be improving on yourself in terms of your skill set, in terms of your career trajectory. So I think that was like a big motivator for me, going into it.
Oh, okay, Shaneil, maybe like just for someone who's listening, like practically, how when you transitioned to corporate and you started needing to manage your time, how did you do it? What are the tools that you used? What could be helpful for someone who's experiencing that shift right now?
Yeah, so I think, just maybe looking back at my lessons, waking up earlier than everyone else has been a real benefit for me. So my Monday to Friday routine is I usually wake up between 3 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. And the first thing I do, or maybe just going through my ritual in the morning, is make myself a cup of coffee, put on a podcast, and listen to something that I want to learn, or listen to something that's going to really get me into the zone for the rest of the day. The second thing I do then is create a list of what I need to achieve for that day. And this list shouldn't be a really, really long list. That was another sort of learning that I had. Sometimes when you have too many things on the list, you try to prioritize, you forget things. It should be the things that by the end of the day, if you achieve these 2 or 3 or 4 things, you'd be like, today was a successful day. So I put down the most important things on that list early in the morning. And as I get other things in the day, I will add it to a piece of paper. But I try my best to either delegate, or if I can't delegate, get rid of those things later on in the day. So the things that I put on early in the morning are usually the things that are aligned to my long-term career trajectory and the skills that I want to learn. And then I also try to do a deep learning session early in the morning, because it's quite quiet. So you can get like 1 to 2 hours of focused learning on something that I really want to learn. At the moment, it's data science. So like that's really what I push in the morning. And how about yourself? What sort of learnings do you have for everyone?
For me, managing my time, and like that's pretty interesting. That's a very interesting take there, Shaneil. I like that the fact that you talk about waking up early, and trying to learn more deeply. For me, maybe just leveraging off that, I've just recently found the art of journaling, and I think that is as a tool that is I find very valuable at the beginning of each day. Not every day, but when I just feel like I need to download my thoughts into my journal, I sort of like reflect, like on key things that have maybe happened during the week, or just how I'm feeling. I think it really helps to like center me and refocus me before my day starts, and it helps to put things into perspective. I think for anyone who's listening, I think maybe just like looking into that to see maybe if journaling is something that could be for you. And then I also do lists at the beginning of the day, right? I write like, this is what I need to do, and then I tick it off as I go. I do think it's important for us to talk about the days where you lack that consistency, because often that happens to me. So like I took a character test a few years ago, and the Enneagram test. It's done a lot in corporate. So I'm an Enneagram type 7. which I think it's called an explorer or something. So I hate boxes. I hate I just like things to be like if we're problem solving to just be it shouldn't be in boxes, you know. So like things like structures, lists, and like aren't things that I'm naturally inclined to doing, you know. But I have found great value in doing that in the morning. So I think there is always room for us to, no matter what you're predisposed to grow into something that could be more beneficial, regardless of what type of a character you are or what you're predisposed to. We all have the ability to learn and unlearn certain things, and I think that's an important thing to also reflect on. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, whether it's a list or whether you have some sort of routine, so you're not actually writing a list out per se, but there's something that you're doing that's ensuring that there's a routine in place and that you're executing on your deliverables, then that in itself is a way for you to methodically approach the tasks that you have. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the way me and you do it, but I do think it's important to build some sort of routine or some sort of discipline around how you take on the day, how you deconstruct your tasks, how you deconstruct the larger part of your day, let me rather say, into smaller tasks and then execute on those. And I think that that's sort of also maybe touches on your goal setting, which is something else that I do. So I have like a clear Excel sheet of the goals that I want to achieve for this year. And then those are broken down into smaller tasks on a daily basis for me. And I have a friend, Rooney, that I actually we check in every few months to see how we're actually executing on those tasks, to make sure that by the time year end comes, we've actually achieved a fair amount during the year. And I think it's important when you are doing your daily planning, like you're talking about these routines, that some of these tasks that you're doing during the day are actually aligned to those long-term goals that you have. So you know that when the year or when the end of the year comes or the end of the month comes, you're not actually sitting there thinking, Flip, I feel like so tired and I feel like I've been productive, but I've just been moving towards something that isn't aligned to my end goal, if that makes sense.
And I think if I could add on, because I'm also into goal setting, is also making a distinction between, not making a distinction, but allowing your long-term goals to feed into your short-term goals. So I like to imagine myself in 5 years, like, what am I doing? What will I be involved in? Where do I see myself? You know, and I start thinking, what are the things that Jonathan needs to get to this point? You know, if it's a career pivot into a specific space, you know, maybe it requires Jonathan to do an MBA in the next year or two, you know, so it starts feeding into my short-term goals. You know, I think there needs to be that link between your vision of yourself in the future and what you're planning to do, because then it breaks down the short-term goals. Those are the steps to reaching that future Jonathan. Yeah, but actually, based on personal experience, like, goal setting is pretty amazing. I remember uh, I set goals every year at the beginning of the year. It's super cliche, right? At New Year's, around that time, January, I have like goals that I set out, and I start ticking them off as the year goes by. I bumped into a 2017 list that I had, and I don't think I checked if I ticked things off at the end of the year, but I saw it 3 years later, and I was like, oh my god, I ticked off like many major milestones that I'd, you know, because when you goal set, you even like try to reach for the stars, right? You don't really like you put things that are even beyond your reach sometimes. But I was like, oh, I reached most of these things, and I think it's also a great tool to reflect and to have hindsight. You know, that benefit of hindsight later, like, okay, this actually worked because of this, and what did I do? What made me better? Yeah, those conversations with yourself.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think I've seen the same. I think it's important just when you put something down on paper, even if you forget about it, you've seen it, it's in your head. So when you go out there and you start doing stuff, I believe it's at least subconsciously there in your head. And like you're saying, sometimes you'll check on it 3 years from now and you'll be like, oh, wow, I actually achieved quite a bit. And I think maybe just pivoting from that, looking at some of the pros and cons that we've seen along the way. So I know that you, for those of you who don't know, Jonathan did his master's last year while doing his articles for accounting. And anyone that's in that space would know that, you know, you have your board exams, and then to still take on your master's it requires some hectic time planning from Jonathan's side. So I think maybe speaking on that and letting us know, did you think you took on too much? Is that something you would do again? And you know, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, hey, like I don't know if it requires a lot of planning. It requires a little bit of insanity, I think. I had a like I have this thing where I just I'm easily excitable and stimulated, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this, you know. But once I started doing it, I was like, wow, this is actually not easy. So like my master's was demanding one thing. Work is actually a learning environment, actually. So you're also learning at work. So that's another thing. And then I was also studying for my board exams. And I think if I were to reflect right now, I think there were three things that helped me to get through that. So one would be creating, well, overall, it'll be creating a support system, right? So one, creating a support system with your workmates, creating a support system with your classmates, and creating a support system that's outside of those two worlds. So like at work is a learning environment, and you have to leverage off other people's experiences, because like by yourself, you're only learning what you're being exposed to, but you also need to leverage off like your other workmate who has been exposed to something else to like sort of like give you the download of how to do certain things. So I created a support system at work that allowed me that even though I wasn't 24/7 like on my job, just focusing on my job, there were people who would like also help me catch up on things that I might have missed because my attention is divided. So that workplace support system was fantastic. Great people at the organization I work at. So that was also pretty amazing. And also like the fact that my workplace was pretty willing to give me tons of study leave, right? Like I went and asked, I was like, oh, so I'm just going to take unpaid leave. They were like, why? Why would you take unpaid leave? Like, don't worry. Like, here's what was it, 15 or 20 days or something of paid master's leave, you know. So I think it's great, especially if you work for an organization that just believes in also like the growth of its people, right? The second thing was that support system within my classmates. So it's great. It's almost like you create a support group of people that are going through the same thing you're going through, that like understand, because they're also working, they're also trying to get their assignments done. We're all going through the same thing, so that I know that I'm not unique. Like I'm not the only person going through this. It's psychologically, I think it really helped me to know that I wasn't alone. There were people I could just call that could relate totally with what I was going through, which was fantastic. Uh, and lastly, just having friends that were outside that the workplace and classmates. So when I first when I started this masters, I was living with in a 3-bedroom apartment with these two very good friends of mine, Cassie and Gemma. So Cassie was a teacher, and Gemma was a musician. So I kid you not, I'll come back stressed about all of this weird stuff that I'm going through. Then I'll come home, then Cass will be talking about her kids and how there is a lice infection in class. And, like it almost like took my mind off all the stress that I was going through. And I think I needed that, just having an environment outside those workplace and school stresses. So I think it's important to have friends outside those two spheres, people that don't have those stresses, and to get your mind off that stress. Yeah, so I think those three things, Shaneil, in reflection, were the reason why I survived my masters.
Yeah, and I think touching on that last point, aside from just having a conversation, it gives you a different perspective. Because if you're always around people who are worrying about the same things that you're worrying about, it sort of consumes your world, and it makes you think this is a pass or fail. This is something you have to do. This is the only thing in the world. And if you fail it now, then it's the end of it. And when you meet people outside of those spheres working in, and I've seen this now when I speak to my friends who are not in sort of consulting or in the finance space, when you start chatting to them about like their concerns, you realize that your concern is just related maybe to your industry. It sort of makes it seem smaller, which is a good thing. Then you don't stress so much about it. It's sort of like, oh, okay, every world or every industry or every career has their own stresses, and the world is actually not going to explode if you're unable to make this deadline because there's 3 other deadlines, or whatever it is. You can try your best, but sometimes it doesn't work out, and it's just important to have that perspective and remain calm. I think that's another big thing when you're doing your planning or these goal settings, to realize that you will fall off the bus sometimes. You will have days where you're not waking up early in the morning, and you are having those days where you maybe don't execute all of your tasks, and that's also okay. That's fine.
Shaneil, well, you're you're the tech guy. Like, for example, you're talking about how you're delving into data science at the moment, but not even maybe to go that deep. What are just the tools? Because there are a lot of like tools, like even though like Outlook, for example. Like, what are the tools that you leverage on day to day that you think could be helpful in time management?
Yeah, so I think if anyone has the Microsoft the 365 package on their laptop, they should really start utilizing it's called Power Automate now, Microsoft Power Automate, and you can literally start automatically getting to or responding to emails that may require like a different response now and then, but when you start to think about it, it's almost standardized, or you can send it to a different folder, and you can start automating a lot of mundane tasks that you spend a lot of time on. And that way, when certain emails come through, you're actually focusing your time and energy on the things that you want to do, instead of the things that you have to do. So I think the Power Automate is a very, very useful tool. I'm still new at it, so I'm still like sort of learning how to do the different macros, record different tasks, and start like unearthing the real power behind it. But I think that's a really, really useful tool that I've come across. And then I think the Microsoft Access tool is also quite useful. And I guess another cool thing about any Microsoft product is that you're able to connect each of them. So for example, when I'm on Microsoft Teams and I've created a Power BI presentation, you can then connect that presentation to your Microsoft Teams presentation and start showing everyone the things that you've been working on without them necessarily having that project. So you don't need to send it out to everyone and explain to them, download the Excel file, this is how you update the data source. You can present this automatically there. Or if you want to send out a survey, you can use Microsoft Access or Microsoft Forms, collect all of the survey, present the results on Microsoft Teams. So all of these little small things that save you, maybe a half an hour here and there are quite useful in your day-to-day activities. And that way you become a lot more efficient. And it seems like, to everyone else that you're actually executing a lot of tasks, but you're not. You're leveraging technology.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm actually going to go check out those tools because I haven't used any of those before. And I think it's important for us to like, things like tech, like the way you're looking at it now, it has the power to differentiate you, especially in the workplace. So I think there is great value in looking into like what tools to use, and just like tools that no one's even using, like just to elevate yourself to the next level. But even on a basic level, because I think for me, like I was shocked by just a few tweaks. Like for example, Microsoft Outlook, right? Like you get, I have like, I don't know, like over 10,000 emails that have gone through my mailbox in a year. I don't know, but it's a lot of emails. And I was sitting down, I think it was my second year, and there was a manager who was like, Jonathan, this is like, why would your mailbox be looking like this? Then he just created a few folders, like the client I was working on, the name was the folder, the next client folder, a folder, a folder. And then he just grouped the emails per client. And within that client folder, I can also have like the different people that work there as different folders, like just small tweaks like that can be complete game changers, because now you're not like looking for like, oh, it's searching for emails and you don't even understand like what the different emails are saying because they're all scattered everywhere, I think they're just like even the small things like that could be game changers in terms of time management and organization.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, those they're just creating the different folders and having rules. So for instance, every time Jonathan or somebody from this group sends me an email, it goes to this folder. Those are small things that you can do that just starts making your life a little bit easier. And even the fact that you can create groups. So for example, we were on the same millennial board. I have a group called the Millennial Board with all of you guys. And every time I want to send an email, I just enter Millboard into the thing instead of entering or looking to copy and paste everyone's email address from other past emails. I just enter Millboard and it automatically sends to everyone.
I don't think I've used that before, Shaneil. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's very useful. And I do the same thing when I'm on a client. So that client team, I'll just create a group for them at the beginning. And then whenever I want to send things off, I just type in that name for that specific client. And then that just gets sent. So I think those small, tiny changes that you can start to do on your email and your Outlook and those sort of things, just really, and even sometimes you may think that it takes you a long time to set this up, but the cool thing about automation, or the way that I see it, is it pays off a time dividend. So yes, it'll take you a long time to do at the beginning maybe, but every time after that becomes easier. So you're getting a time dividend from this effort that you put in initially.
So maybe from a learning perspective, I think what I'm extracting from this conversation about this particular point is that there are many tools that you can leverage on to better manage your time and to better organize. But there tends not to be like a one cheat sheet that tells you all of these tools in like, oh, here's the cheat sheet on all the tools you can use. So I think maybe as a first year in corporate, maybe some good advice would be, because there'll be a Shaneil, right, who has 4 years in corporate experience, but he won't have like the cheat sheet on the side of his laptop. But I think it's helpful to like ask like your senior, like, oh, what are the tools that you use, that could be helpful in improving my day. Just like how that manager taught me when I was in second year, just a simple thing like folder allocation. These are things that you can only extract from conversations with people that are, I think, have more experience than you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the conversations that those are definitely important to have, because not everyone or every work environment or every company is using the same tools. So go there, find somebody who's been coping well with multiple projects, or somebody who you admire, and ask them like, how do you manage your day-to-day activities? And then you'll get these little nuggets of knowledge from them, and they can give you a lot more feedback, because it's not something that I don't go and volunteer that knowledge, because I think from my perspective that everyone else is doing that. And it's only when somebody asks you that you realize, oh, okay, this is actually helpful.
Yeah. Okay, Shaneil, I have a question for you. So like we're obviously working from home. Like this conversation we're having it via Zoom, and you're in Johannesburg, I'm in Cape Town. Like it's almost like we're in a new normal, right? Like we're working from home, where you sleep, where you eat, the same like establishment is where you work now. How have you managed that? Are there certain things that could be helpful for people out there listening?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess working from home is a bit different. It's very different to your normal day to day. And I think for me, one of the things is try to keep your working hours consistent throughout the day. So if you're going to work from 9 to 4 and 9 to 5, try to do that as best you can. Like obviously it gets a bit difficult when you have a client deliverable, but try to keep within those hours, and you're focusing within those hours on work tasks. And then I think leave some time, and for me, this is really what the early morning is for, my 4 a.m. rise. Leave some time in your day, whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours, to focus on the things that are going to help you pivot to where you want to be 5 years from now. That's really, I guess, the benefit of working from home, because you no longer also need to drive anywhere, right? You no longer need to commute. So take that additional time that you have and use it to really refine yourself and your vision of where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, or even 10 years from now. and start to, even if it's something like, I want to start freeing up 30 minutes of my day. Use those extra hours in the morning to start seeing what technologies are available, what technologies are approved by my company, what managers, what are they using, and start to learn, even if it's a little bit of code or whatever it is, just to optimize your day. Start optimizing as best you can, because you're given the opportunity now. Your 24 hours are almost exclusively yours. You no longer need to drive anywhere. So try to see this from a positive light and say like, okay, well, now I own my day. Let me split it according to what I want.
Well, I like how you're pulling out the positives of the COVID situation, and I think I see those as well. Like, I think we do have we've cut out all the inefficiencies in terms of time which we take traveling to work and stuff like that. So I totally agree. I think maybe what I would add for me is one point, and that's mental health. I think it's very important. There is a psychological toll I think this takes. The fact that there's no longer separation between, for many things, a place that gives people great torment and stress, and your safe haven, which is your home, and there's no line dividing those two anymore. So there is a psychological toll that takes, and I think it demands us to be more cognizant of our mental health. And for me, that is, I'm trying to exercise a bit more, jog during those jogging times, and I think, well, I don't know if other organizations have this, but my organization actually has what they call Flexi Time. So you can work your 8 hours, but you can flex them to different parts of the day. I can wake up at 7 a.m. and finish earlier. And I think that is also a valuable tool, especially if you have if you have other obligations, like you have maybe you're staying with your parents and they need your help, or you have a small family that also needs your help. You can also work around that, yeah, well, if there are no deadlines or pressing meetings, you can flex it a little bit.
Okay, so key things that we can extract from this episode, I think, is the power of goal setting, the power of being able to visualize a target that you're setting for yourself and the impact it can make on you. And I particularly liked how we also looked at how that could also be used as a tool to assess yourself and use when looking back in hindsight on the things that you did well. So it's a great personal management tool. We talked a lot about various tools that you can use day to day and the power of leveraging off more experienced people within your organization to learn from what they do to streamline their time management and organizational processes. And most importantly, the use of a support system and why that is important and how you could leverage off that, especially in times of immense stress that could impact your time management and organization. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Young Professional African Edition. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on Apple Music, Spotify, or whatever platform that you use to listen to podcasts.
And if you enjoyed the show, give us a like and a follow. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at YP_Africa. That's YP_Africa. And if you've missed an episode, don't stress. You can catch up on our YouTube channel, YP_Africa. Like and subscribe, guys. Like and subscribe.
That's it from us, guys. See you next week.